When we're going to graph the reciprocal functions, the first step is to identify the vertical and horizontal asymptotes. The vertical asymptote is going to come from the denominator of the fraction. And the thing is, we do not want the denominator to equal 0. So which x value would make the denominator equal to 0? Well, that would be when x is equal to -2. The vertical asymptote is going to come from whatever is being added after the fraction. See, that fraction will never equal 0, so the whole expression will never equal 0 minus 1. That means that our horizontal asymptote will be y equals -1. So let's graph both of these asymptotes. The vertical asymptote is going to be the vertical line at x equals -2. So on the x-axis, I'm going to find -2 and then draw a vertical line passing through. Similarly, for the horizontal asymptote, I'll find -1 on the y-axis, that's right here, and draw a horizontal asymptote. These asymptotes are going to be my boundaries for the graph. Now we have to figure out which corners the graph is going to be in. To do that, we're going to set up an XY table and pick a couple points. The points that we're going to want to pick are going to be one step away from our vertical asymptote. So I'm going to take one step to the left at -1 and one step to the right at -3. And these are going to be my two x coordinates, -1 and -3. To find the y coordinates, we just plug them into the equation. So y is equal to 1 over -1 plus 2 minus 1. Well, -1 plus 2 is 1, 1 over 1 is 1, and then 1 minus 1 is going to equal 0. So at -1, the y coordinate is going to be 0. Similarly, for -3, we'll have 1 over -3 plus 2 minus 1. -3 plus 2 is -1, so -1 minus 1 is -2. So that's that y coordinate. When we plot both of these points, -1, 0, and -3, -2, now we can see which corners the branches of our hyperbola are going to be in. So from each of these points, I'm going to draw my curve to get closer to each of the asymptotes. It should curve and follow the edges set by the asymptote. So let's try this a couple more times. With y equals 1 over x plus 2, the vertical asymptote is going to come from the denominator. So the thing that will make that denominator equal to 0 is when x is equal to 0. The horizontal asymptote will come from the constant term that's being added after the fraction. So that's going to be y equals 2. Now go over to the graph. On the x-axis, find when x is equal to 0 and draw the vertical asymptote. On the y-axis, find when y is equal to 2 and draw the horizontal asymptote. Next, we need to find 2 points. So get your XY table ready and pick 2 x values, one to the left of the vertical asymptote and one to the right of the vertical asymptote. Since my vertical asymptote is at 0, one step to the left will be -1 and one step to the right would be +1. Find their corresponding y values by plugging them into the equation. So 1 over -1 plus 2, and make -1 plus 2, which is 1. And plug in +1 as well. So 1 over 1 plus 2, that'd make 1 plus 2, which is 3. Next, go plot those 2 points that we just found. -1, +1 is right here. And +1, 1, 2, 3 is up here. Now I know which corners the branches of my asymptote lie in, and I just need to draw them in by drawing a curve that gets closer to each asymptote. And that's a good graph. Let's do it one more time. When y equals -1 over x minus 3 plus 1, again we're going to find the vertical asymptote, which will come from the denominator. So x has to equal +3. The horizontal asymptote will come from the constant term being added after the fraction, so y equals 1. Now go over to the axes and graph the vertical asymptote by finding 3 on the x-axis, then drawing your vertical asymptote. The horizontal one will happen at y equals 1, so on the y-axis find 1 and draw your horizontal asymptote. Next we find 2 points by picking 2 x values. So I'm going to take 1 step to the left of my vertical asymptote at 2 and 1 step to the right at 4, and those will be the x values that I picked. Find their corresponding y values by plugging them into the equation. -1 over 2 minus 3 plus 1, which will give me -1 over -1 plus 1. So altogether, that's going to be 2. Also with 4, -1 over 4 minus 3 plus 1, give me -1 over +1 plus 1, which will be 0. Plotting both of those points, 2, 2, and 4, 0, I know which quadrants the branches of my hyperbola are going to be in. So let's draw them by getting closer to each asymptote. And that's how you should draw the graph to the reciprocal functions.